This is the Litigator's Edge podcast with your host, Aniket Sawant.
Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of The Litigator's Edge, a podcast where innovative attorneys reveal the strategies that have transformed their legal practice. My name is Aniket Sawant, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Threadio. I'm so excited to have Mitch Panter as my very first guest on this show. Mitch is managing partner of Panter and San Pedro, a leading personal injury law firm in the Miami area with over 30 years of rich history. Mitch, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for having me here. I'm so thrilled to be the first guest, and I look forward to being on more and more, and I look forward to you having a great, successful run at this.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Mitch, before we get started, as we discussed in the lead up to this podcast, I request every guest share either a fun fact about themselves that people might not know about, or a cringe joke, a dad joke, as some call it, that they particularly enjoy. Which is it going to be for you?
I looked through the bad jokes, couldn't come with anything. I'll come up with a fun fact. Fun fact, I love to garden. I bring in my office peppers and tomatoes, and I love to share them, and it's a wonderful thing. We're in South Florida, where today's not a sunny day, but it's a good rainy day, and we need the rain, so I'm looking forward to getting out in the garden tomorrow and pulling out some more fresh fruits and vegetables for everybody to share.
That's awesome. We're hitting close to about lunchtime here in California, so I'm getting hungry already. Thank you for that. Well, with that, Mitch, let's get started. So I think of every attorney who joins me on this podcast as a superhero. And of course, every superhero has an origin story. What's yours?
Well, yeah, when I was 6, I wanted to be a lawyer. I knew I always wanted to be a lawyer. I was arguing, and you never give up and you keep fighting the battles. I went through school and college and law school, and first practice out, I did some criminal defense work. I did some family work, did some insurance defense work until I landed in the right spot, the personal injury work. We represent people injured because somebody else screwed up, because somebody else wasn't paying attention, because they were negligent. We'll talk about negligence and what that means. But, my goal in life is to help people, and we do it every day. There's not a day that goes by where I'm not answering the phone with somebody with a problem, and sometimes I can help them, sometimes I can't, but at least we'll steer them in the right direction. I belong to a business group, and in that business group, my little motto, my thing is answer the goddamn phone. And so, the communication skills that lawyers are supposed to have is what differentiates us from other people. And the communication skills that we have here at Panter and San Pedro and myself is what differentiates us from every other lawyer. We pick up the phone, we answer the phone, we talk to people.
That's awesome, especially in a day and age where, ironically, with technology, people tend to use less personal methods of communication. Answering the phone is still extremely valuable. So that's
you mentioned that, and this thing does everything. What it kills me. Maybe I'm old. Pick up the phone. Talk to somebody. This right. Skyping and Zooming and all that other stuff that goes on with the texts and stuff. Pick up the phone and talk to somebody. It frustrates the heck out of me. I had it happen 5 times this morning already. If I'm dealing with a case, trying to talk to opposing counsel or my client or a witness, pick up the phone and talk to somebody. Nothing beats that. That's still in today's day and age what needs to be done.
Oh, for sure. Let's talk a little bit about your journey and some maybe key milestones along your litigation journey of almost 3 decades or so forth. So what are some of the key cases?
Or 4 decades.
Oh, really? Wow.
This is my 39th year as a lawyer. So
amazing.
Moving along. So theoretically, I started off, I went to undergrad at University of Michigan and froze and said, I'm coming back home to Florida. I spent a year in Austria, a junior year abroad, it's called, came back to Miami, went to law school in Miami. I interned for the state attorney's office, so I did some prosecuting. When I got out of school, I worked for a small boutique firm. We did mostly family work, but I did some criminal work. Back in the day, there was drug defense work where there was multiple defendants, and I got to work alongside some of the better lawyers in our community, if not in the country, and learn from them. I then did some insurance defense work. I did some landlord-tenant work until I landed with my brother, and we've been together for more than 30 years. We have a building called the Panter Building on the corner of Kendall Drive and US 1 in Miami. We represent people that are injured due to the negligence of others. We do medical malpractice, products liability, premises liability, slip and fall, every type of negligence case you can imagine. That's what we do. Occasionally, we'll run into a defense case where a family or friend member is being sued. And because of the knowledge and skill that we've got, we're able to help them out as well. But for the most part, we represent people that are injured due to the negligence of somebody else. And it gives me great satisfaction to do that.
That's awesome. I'm sure that being on both sides, as it were, gives you the skill set to represent both sides, depending on the nature of the client.
Well, I use that. That's an important aspect of it. My first 5 years out, I did what's called insurance defense work. So I represented insurance companies in cases where I'm on the other side, and I learned the reporting skills. I learned the setting the reserve skills, all the skills that you need to know on the other side, which enables me now to know, okay, this is what they're looking for. This is how they evaluate it. These are the things that they look for in what the case is all about. They look at the lawyer, they look at the judge, they look at the community, they look at the verdicts in the area, they look at insurance coverages. So by having that background and that knowledge, it enables me to represent my clients better now and perform my current job.
That's awesome. Over your 39-year career, what are some significant cases or matters that maybe changed how you approach what you're doing, and how have you incorporated that in your practice today?
I had a really unique and great experience, and I'm very proud of. I was able to argue in front of the Florida Supreme Court. We had a case where a gentleman was on what's called a scissor lift, and as he went up the scissor lift, he fell down because there wasn't an appropriate chain to protect him, and he wound up being paralyzed and was severely injured. We went to trial. We won. We got a significant verdict in the case. The case subsequently went on to an appeal, went to the first court, the first appellate level, and then ultimately the Florida Supreme Court. And I learned about going to the Supreme Court. I learned about who the judges are, what they're looking for, how do I prepare for that argument, what are the issues that I need to address, and the respectful way of doing so in front of that court. Also had the honor of working in the federal court system in several drug-related cases early in my career, and learned what the federal system is all about and how that works. I've represented insurance companies, I've represented individuals, I've represented businesses, families of all types. So by traveling as well in my personal life, I've learned to address people and to understand what their needs are. Every person, every case is different and needs to be handled different. You can't box them all together. You have to get to the merits of the case, and you have to find out who the people are and what differentiates them from every other case. Early on, I learned that the insurance companies have a pattern of okay, you have X amount of dollars in medical bills, X amount of injuries. This is what it is. But that extra little thing that you can give, that going the extra mile, this is a father, this is a mother, this is a dancer, this is a ballet person. What differentiates them? Why is their case bigger and better? And what can I do to help them get the top dollar for their case?
That's awesome. It almost sounds, Mitch, like there's a storytelling element to this as well, in terms of, when you were bringing up those individual personas, I could almost visualize them and visualize the impact that an injury might have on them.
I always say that lawyers, not necessarily storytellers, but movie producers. We have characters, we have themes, we have plots. When I work, I coach the high school mock trial. That's they plan a trial, and it's a fake trial, but it's a trial nonetheless. And one of the first things we do is we talk to them about what's your theme. What are you going to do? And when I first get a case, I think about that. Way back when I had a case, and it was do the right thing. That was my theory. That was my theme. I had a bus driver that ran a red light and crashed into a minivan with my clients in it. One child was catastrophically injured. Everybody else, 4 or 5 other people in the van, were seriously hurt. We had the video from the camera from the bus showing what happened, and I was pursuing a case against the county. And the county is notoriously cheap, notoriously egregious in their handling cases. And when I went to mediation, I had a big poster sign filled up said, "Do the right thing." And it was probably the time when the movie was out, but it was a hot thing. But do the right thing. Just do what you're supposed to do. When I coach these kids, I tell them, what's your theme? Work that theme from your opening statement to the closing argument through all of the witnesses. So, who are your characters? Characters are witnesses. What are your props? Props are exhibits. Depositions are the script. So you have to be a movie teller, a movie producer, a director. Get the characters all in line, do all those sort of things. That's what we do as trial lawyers. And even more so when the case first comes in, I got to gather my evidence. I got to take my pictures. I got to send my clients to the correct doctors. I need to retain the correct exhibits, correct expert witnesses, and get them the exhibits. So if you do that preparation, the end result is going to be hopefully in your favor.
That's wonderful. I've heard this term storyteller used a lot, but that might be the first time I've heard movie producer.
Some of the best,
Yeah,
some of the best trial lawyers are historically storytellers.
right.
But it's more than just telling the story, because it's everything that builds up the story, and you got to be the movie producer more so, or equally so, as the storyteller, because I'm not only the storyteller. Sometimes I'll work with my witnesses to get them to be the storyteller, to be able to tell them, all right, this is your opportunity to tell the judge, the jury, the insurance company, the mediator, what happened to you. And why is your story, why is your version, why is your scenario different than everybody else's? And so coaching them, directing them, working with them to get them to help out. Also, opening statement, closing arguments, that's my job. That's the lawyer. Direct examination, cross-examination, taking a deposition, that's what I do. But it's more than that. You have to be able to lead other people, whether it be your witness, your doctor, your whatever it is that's going to help you with your case, prove your case. And that's why it's more than just a storytelling situation.
That's fantastic. You mentioned, Mitch, that you coach you coach kids in school, and I was doing some research, and it looks like you have a long and rich history along with your other partners in terms of giving back to the community. Can you talk about all the various things that you do?
Yeah, I want to be involved in the community. It's funny because so we do some advertising on television and radio, and I just went and did a whole bunch of TV commercials and centered around and focused around the community. We live in a small community. We're in Miami. Miami's this big monster city, but we're competing with these monster lawyers and law firms that are nationwide, big box lawyers. But I want to be a big fish in a little pond. So in our community, we support the arts. So we just sponsored a 2-day art show in what's called the Village of Pinecrest near me. We work on a July 4th party in the Village of Palmetto Bay. We work with, I specifically work with Career Day. So since my kids were in 1st and 2nd grade, I would go to the elementary school and I'd bring my props. I remember I had this prop of a gentleman getting run over by a lawnmower with his toe cut off. And the 1st and 2nd, 3rd graders got a big kick out of that. And, my wife yelled at me, and the teachers did, but it was the coolest thing and they loved it. So we're involved in the high schools, in the middle schools. We do scholarships for kids going into law school. We're very actively involved in our community and giving back because we feel that that's something we've been blessed. I've got a great career. We do really well, but I want to be able to help the next generation of lawyers and no matter what they are, to help them to grow. So by helping with the We the People competition and the mock trial competition and the other law programs, I get into the schools and talk to the kids and help them out and do whatever we can for the community. We're big in that. We think it's something important that we can do, and as such, we do it.
That's fantastic. Really appreciate that. And I'm sure the kids and the teachers and everybody else in the community does as well. When you coach these kids, and they may be younger kids or older kids, what sort of or even folks as they are thinking about or considering law school, what advice do you typically give them, and how does that maybe change depending on the audience that you're speaking with?
So most people don't know what it means to be a lawyer. And what I try to explain to them is, first and foremost, I've told this to my kids even, they just happen to be lawyers doing different work than I do, but you got to love what you do. There's an expression, I get it wrong. If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Right.
But even within the field of law, you can be a criminal lawyer, you can be a civil lawyer, you can be a family lawyer, you can do probate, you can do trusts and wills, you can do business, you can do real estate. There's such a wide variety. A doctor, there's so many. Think of each and every body part. A doctor can specialize in each and every one of those parts. So you got to love what you do. You got to want to do it. Don't do it because your parents tell you to do it. Don't do it, or don't not do it because you're afraid of owing hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans. But like what you're doing, work towards it, enjoy it. Don't get burnt out doing it. When we work with them to try to explain to them the varieties of law that's available, and that just because you're a lawyer doesn't mean you can't do some field. If you like sports, a lot of my friends and my friends' kids grew up loving sports, so now they're sports agents. So there's a wide variety of I've got friends that are doctor lawyers. There's a person that went to school with me that was a doctor and decided to go back to school and become a lawyer, and they do medical malpractice. You can do the plaintiff side or the defense side. So again, it comes down to liking what you're doing, enjoying what you're doing, and you'll never work a day in your life.
That's yeah, words to live by for sure. Thanks, Mitch. If we now think about advice that you would give to somebody maybe early or mid career, somebody with maybe a few years, just starting out, or maybe a decade in, what advice would it be for somebody who's in a similar field as you in injury law?
The people we always tell them, come away from the dark side. So people that do the insurance defense work, come on over to the plaintiff side and represent people injured instead of the companies that are the guilty parties. But try different things, work different ways. You can do your cases by paper and pencil, or you can do your cases by going out and interviewing witnesses. We try to tell them to go out and live a day in the life. So if I have a client that's stuck in his house because he's incapacitated, I don't want to just listen to him and talk. I want to go to his house. I want to see the aids they have. I want to see the construction that they had to do for their house. I want to live the life. I want to see what it really feels like. I want to go and I want to see them in the hospital if they're in the hospital to know what's going on. I tell people to take pictures of what's going on, to keep a journal of what's going on, because in 6 months or a year or 2 years, by the time you get to the trial level, things are going to change. Witnesses are going to go away. So it's important to document things and pay attention to what's going on. People that are young lawyers, I've got a lot of my son's friends now that are 2, 3, 4, 5 years out being lawyers, constantly calling me for advice. And I'm happy to give it to them. Find a mentor. A mentor is a wonderful thing in life, to be able to have somebody you can talk to, good, bad, or indifferent. I work with 5 lawyers in my firm, and we're constant, and everybody's got a different viewpoint. We can look at one case and say, I'm going to win, I'm going to lose, I'm going to get $1 million, I'm going to get 500,000, I'm going to get 50. Whatever it is, you got to have those different viewpoints and put them all together. So you've got different ways, because everybody views things differently based upon their backgrounds and their histories and their outlooks on things. So talk to people, find out what's going on, get lots of different opinions, and don't be closed-minded. Open up your mind, open up, your mind, your heart, whatever it might be that you need to do to represent people and understand what they're going through.
That's awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Mitch. Let's switch gears a little bit to the use of technology in your practice. We spoke about picking up the phone. We spoke about, documenting things on pen and paper. But regardless of all of that, let's face it, technology has sort of continued its inevitable march over the last few decades, especially, it seems like. So how has technology changed your approach to case and trial preparation, if it has at all?
Tremendously so. Let me give you the classic example.
Sure.
So 25 years ago, we had an automobile negligence case where there was somebody that was in Canada, and they went back home after the accident, and they treated with a doctor there, but the accident was here. So we needed to take depositions of doctors in Canada. Option A was fly to Canada, bring the video cameras, take the deposition. Option B, newest technology in the world. We would go downtown Miami to a central location. A doctor would go to wherever they were, and there was a cameraman, and we would do a deposition that was videotaped. Nowadays, my depositions, my hearings, my notices, everything is Zoom.
Right.
My mediations are Zoom. My depositions are Zoom. And that's a COVID thing more so. It was before the depositions when you made them videotape. So in case the client or the witness couldn't get to the trial, you'd have it preserved. And instead of just reading a document, you'd actually see their face, and it makes a much better presentation in front of a jury. Nowadays, that's what it's all about. We still go to court for a trial because you can't avoid that. But even witnesses, if they're far away, can appear by Zoom, or a videotape deposition. And then the AI thing, motions and papers and articles and research. When I was first in law school, they came out with this thing called Lexis and Westlaw. So we switched from a book where you'd actually go and research in a book. That was, believe it or not, how lawyers worked. You had a book and you had to learn the citations. But when I was first starting out 35, 40 years ago, they had this computer program that you typed in a certain, the word negligence or a case you wanted, or an issue that you wanted, and you could find it on the computer. Now I could talk into this thing, and any question I have, no matter whether it's legal or medical or anything else, I can find it in a heartbeat. So in a way, it's made things much, much easier. The fact that I don't have to drive downtown to sit around for a 5-minute hearing from a judge and then drive back home and spend 3 hours on what's 3 minutes in a hearing. I can sit at my desk and multitask now and have my suit and tie and shorts on, and get things done. So it's getting bigger, it's getting better. It's also scarier because it diverts people from talking.
Right.
We often talk about lawyers of my age and my generation. God, it used to be nice. You'd go downtown, you'd speak to the guy next to you, you'd find out what his case is about. You'd talk to your opposing counsel face to face, and so many times you'd resolve issues just by face to face instead of the phone conversation, which never worked. So it's got its pros and it's got its cons. All in all, and I don't know how much more advanced it's going to get. I mean, we first had a fax machine. Now everything gets scanned in. I used to have paper. I had paper files. I don't have any paper anymore. Everything's on the computer. I can open up a deposition. I can type in a word, and anytime that word or that phrase or that it appears in the 500 pages of deposition, it'll pinpoint it to me. So it's made life easier, but you have to learn how to use it, and you have to know how to use it and be able to work it to your advantage.
Yep. No, that's for sure. Given that there's so many new technologies that have come out at a periodic rate, and it seems like that rate is just accelerating, how do you evaluate? What's your approach to evaluating which new technologies or approaches are worth implementing, and what's kind of just a quote unquote waste of time at the moment?
I rely upon my younger staff. What do you use? When it first came about, I think MySpace was this wonderful, fantastic kind of new social media thing. In our advertising now, do we use Google? Do you use Twitter? Do you use X? Do you use there's so many different varieties, and each generation or each person does something different. So how do you reach everybody? In our advertising, we have to think about, all right, how do we reach the most people possible? Because I'm not selling cars to a 32 to 38-year-old woman. I
Right.
want anybody and everybody that's injured, and how do I reach them, whether it be through social media, whether it be through radio, whether it be through television. What's the best means available? When we first started advertising, it was yellow pages. They're gone. Then it became TV. That's not so great anymore. Radio, maybe, but social media now is what runs everything. Between getting information, finding out what's hot, finding out what works. They test now. Whenever we have clients, we tell them, be careful with your social media account, because the opposing side is going to look at your social media account. And if you're saying that you can't dance or you can't run or you can't skip, they're going to look at your social media account and see where you've been in the last 6 weeks or 6 months and get those pictures and use those against you. So the technology, the use of it, is both positive and negative. You got to be careful with it. Look what happened just yesterday with the government, where all of a sudden they're talking. They're using this wide open chat system. How in the world that happened is beyond my comprehension. But that's a silly mistake that happened that could have grave consequences. So you got to be careful with what's going on.
For sure. On that note, what are some what's an unconventional strategy that you've employed, maybe using technology, maybe not, that gave you a competitive edge in some matter?
Experts. So one of the things that we started early on is finding an expert witness, but not a hired gun. So if I've got a construction case, I can go and I can hire this big mega firm that has these great scientific guys, or I can hire Jose, that's been a contractor for 37 years, that day in and day out knows what's going on. He pumps the concrete, he paints the walls, he hires the guys. So if I can find somebody in that field that knows what they're doing, I love it. I'm not the smartest guy on everything in the world, but there's not a case that I can't handle when I don't get an expert. I've got a slip and fall case. I hired an engineer. The engineer went out and determined there's too much fan blowing, and the fan blowing on the water makes a problem. So I've got the engineer. Then I've got my slip and fall guy that's able to come in and say the coefficient of friction is not good enough. When I have a medical malpractice case, I have to hire an expert witness that can talk about that area of medicine and whether what the doctor did below was within a reasonable degree of medical probability or certainty. Good, bad, indifferent. So the team we put together, because it's always a team effort. It's not just me. It's me, it's my staff, it's the experts that we work with, it's the doctors that we work with, it's the client, and it's their friends. I have to have what we call before and after witnesses. So who's your friend that's going to best be able to tell the jury or the insurance company or somebody else what's going on, what happened, how has this affected you? So it's preparing the play, the movie.
The movie.
Getting the script all together, getting the exhibits together, getting the props together, and working all that from beginning to end is important. And that's one of the things we work on.
That's awesome. You know, extending the movie analogy a little bit, right? There's been talk about, how AI is affecting Hollywood, like the real Hollywood industry and films and all of that. What are your views on AI in general, and how have you started to use it, if at all, in your practice?
It's scary. I'm old school, and I'm difficult to change. But the younger kids are writing the briefs with it. They're researching with it. They're getting information with it. One of the coolest things is I can go to Google Maps. So if I have an accident scene that occurred at a certain intersection, I can go to Google Maps and find Google Maps will show me all the different accidents that have happened at this particular area for the last 17 years. I had a case where I had a sign that fell down, and a little portion of the sign, about 6 inches, was still sticking up. And we have to prove what's called notice. So what I'm able to do is I'm able to go to Google Maps 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, and see, hey, was that sign up or was that sign down? And what I found was that 6 months and even a year ago, that sign was down, and they knew about it or should have known about it, which helps prove my case. So using that technology, it's great. I'm worried about the fraud and the fakeness that'll
Yes,
happen with AI, and that's a real concern. And how do you prove it? How do you prove that it's real? We'll get there, but there's a lot of fraudsters out there, especially Miami, that want to use the fakeness, and we don't.
of course.
When you have a client that comes in and tells you, I slipped and fell in the supermarket because there was water on the floor, I say to them, well, let me alert you and be careful here. There's going to be video, because they got video showing what happened and whether it's true or not. So you better tell me the truth. And it's amazing how many times, oh, well, something happened different. Because once you get that video, hopefully the video is accurate. Hopefully the video tells the truth in the story, and corroborates, doesn't make different your client's version of it. So, but I'm skeptical of it. And I caution people to you can't believe anything you see or hear anymore, which is a real problem with AI. That's the biggest problem I've got with it.
That's fair. That's fair. Um, this has been an awesome conversation, Mitch. Before we close, what are some last final, closing thoughts, recommendations you'd recommend for litigators who are looking to, gain an edge in today's legal environment? What's sort of timeless and what's new? What
In our run up to today, we talked about, and I'll tell you my biggest thing: client preparation, but more importantly, intake. If you take in garbage in, garbage out, GIGO. That's an old philosophy that works in everything. So if you take a case, and you tell your client from the get-go, going back to the video example, tell me the truth. Talk to me. No matter what the scenario is of what you did in the past. I often use this as an example. No matter if you were a child molester or a thief or a bank robber, what does that have to do with your automobile accident case today? Nothing, unless you lie about it. If you tell the truth and you're straight with your lawyer or the doctors or the people you're working with, we can work around it. I can do what's called a motion eliminating excluded. It has nothing to do with the facts of your case. But I need to take in a good case so that I know I'm going to spend my time, my effort, my energy, and my money representing this person who has a right to be represented correctly and fairly, whether you're doing criminal work or family work, no matter what it is. I want to make sure that I've got a good client. And we've gotten to the point now where I can say, no, thank you. I don't represent you. I can't represent you. I think you might be better served going somewhere else. New lawyers, young lawyers might not have that luxury. They might have to take cases that ordinarily they wouldn't take, but under the circumstances, they've got a bill to pay. So they're going to take the case and they're going to do the work. But and I'm big on this as well. And it's a shame because most people are not in our day. Ethics. One of the things that I teach in the many seminars I do is ethics. And it's being truthful and being honest and being able to sleep well at night, do the best job you can do and represent people fairly, but communicate. The biggest problem that lawyers have with the Florida bar or any bar is the lack of communication. And unfortunately now it's not only having a face-to-face conversation, but documenting it with an email or a letter. If you're dealing with opposing counsel, we settle the case and we have a medical bill and we reduce the medical bill. The doctor tells me, okay, I'll take $50 instead of $450. I put it in writing and I make them sign it. So we've got proof of it. So you need to prove everything. You need to document document everything. But going back to that one word, intake, make sure from the get-go you know what you're doing. You're not taking something above and beyond your abilities as well. Don't get caught doing something that you don't really have the skills or abilities to do, because you won't do a good job.
That's awesome. So I think of it as two words, basically. Intake is at the beginning, and when you're working on the case, doing the right thing, as you mentioned.
It's still
few
do
minutes
the
ago.
right thing, but
Yeah.
and I preach that, and I believe in that, and I try to talk to, whether it be the insurance adjuster or opposing counsel. We represent quite a few insurance adjusters, and people that I've come against have referred cases to us, because one of the things that we always do is be honest and be straight and be fair. I learned early on in my career that if I lie to one judge, what do you think? He's just going to let it go? No, he's going to go to lunch with 14 of his buddies and tell, that one guy, I had him, he was a lying SOB. Or, I had so-and-so in front of me, and that guy from Panter, man, they were honest, they were straight, they were good. Even if it's going to be against me, why are you going to lie to the judge? It's going to come back and haunt you. If I'm going to lose, there's nothing wrong with trying to make new precedent, to change the law. But acknowledge that this is what the law currently is. And if you think it should be changed or somewhat different, then tell them. But don't say that law doesn't exist. This government that we have currently, and the political stance that we're in now, is full of lies and misrepresentations. And we got to get away from that. That's just not right. And if we get back to telling the truth and being honest and do the right thing, I think we'll be a better society, and my profession will be a lot better.
That's awesome, Mitch. Thank you so much. Final question. Is there a question that I should have asked you, but I didn't? And if there's, and what is that?
Are you a grandpa? Yes, I just became a grandpa. It's the most wonderful thing in the world. You could give the baby back and all is good, but it gives me hope. It's the next generation that I hope will have a wonderful environment, and everything will be good. And I hope that we get ourselves straightened out so that my grandchild, my granddaughter will live in a better environment. As parents, you want better for your kids and the next generation and the next generation, just as our parents wanted better for us, and they were able to do it. My parents were able to see me and my brother work together as lawyers, and it's a wonderful thing. I'm able to see my two boys work as lawyers, and now they're having children. So, as we continue on the generation after generation, wanting better. And that's what we want. I want to do videos like this and podcasts like this to instill my knowledge and skills upon other people, so that we can help them out, so we can encourage everybody just to do the right thing.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on being a grandpa, Mitch. I'm sure it's awesome.
That's an important part.
Yes, of course. Well, thank you so much, Mitch. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you and learning more about your life, your career, your values, and your profession.
Thank you. I wish you the most of success. I mean, this is a great opportunity for you. I'm proud to be part of it, and to be your first one out there. I wish you continued success. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Mitch. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Litigator's Edge podcast, brought to you by Threadio.